I work for Sony Music Publishing as managing director. I oversee East and West African markets. The other thing I do when I'm not working for Sony is I founded a company called the Creative Industries Initiative for Africa, and it runs an academy called the Music Business Academy for Africa. We've trained over 1,000 students in the last 4 years, and our students are scattered across 30 countries across the world, including the UK, the US, Canada, Ireland, Spain, Morocco, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique, Malawi, and so on and so forth, right? Now, navigating the music industry is what I'm going to talk about. But we have to identify our reality. Abi, where are we now? What's our current reality? The current reality is that we have successful artists' careers, but we have a literally non-functional ecosystem. Now, the problem with that is one has to be bigger than the other. When the artist's career is bigger than the ecosystem fails. When the ecosystem fails, the artist eventually fails. Does that make sense? It's like poison, right? Poison will eat you up and kill you. So instead of you having the right system or medicine to fight the poison, what happens is the poison consumes your whole body. So the ecosystem needs to function, but when one piece of the ecosystem, which is the most important piece, the one we see, right? So the artist in the ecosystem is the tip of the iceberg. If you look below the water, you're going to see a massive ecosystem of people working, from managers to lawyers to accountants to A&Rs to record labels to studios to engineers and so on and so forth. There's a massive thing. But what you see is the artist. In fact, even the stage where you see the artist, there's a stage manager, there's a runner, there's a sound guy, there's a light guy, there's a bunch of people who are working, so you see the artist properly. So what's happening now is we have an ecosystem that is excessively dependent on the success of artists. And the problem with that is it means the ecosystem is what? Failing. So we have a very successful artist careers, but not a successful ecosystem. So the average Nigerian cannot make money from music here. You need shows, and there's a limited amount of time per show, with a limited amount of budgets per artist per show. So even if we can get every artist on the show, we can't pay them, but the artist needs to get to the show. So money needs to come from somewhere, right? How many of you know how much Spotify is in Nigeria? What? How many of you know how much Spotify costs to have Spotify subscription in Nigeria? You know what this question has proven to me and what it does most of the time? How many of you use Spotify? You use Spotify, but you don't know what it costs, so you're using freemium. Thanks for the information. Now, Spotify costs 900 naira, but if you do the family package, that's 1,300, 1,400, which takes 6 people. So you're looking at about 230 naira per person. Spotify in the UK is £11. So a guy who does 1 million streams in Nigeria and a guy who does 100,000 streams in the UK, the guy who does 100,000 streams in the UK will make more money. The ecosystem is not functioning, right? Now, does this mean that we are a problem, or does it mean that maybe Spotify is not the product for us? We'll get back to that. So what do we need to do? We need to figure out how we're protecting, marketing, and licensing our IP. What is our IP? Our intellectual property. What is our intellectual property? Our culture, our image, our names, our language, who we are as a people, right? The average Nigerian, I remember Grace was talking about that When you walk into a place, you know a Nigerian is there. You know the Nigerian in the room. We are loud and we're obnoxious. And the reality is, although we are loud and we're obnoxious, we will outwork you. Right? So you know. You go into the club, the Nigerian wants you to know, I'm here. Nigerians are the only people in British clubs across the UK or in other parts of Africa that go to a club and tell the DJ, play me Nigerian songs. Here is a bottle of champagne. Play Wizkid. Why? Because that's who we are. So our ID, our IP, our identity, we have to figure out how we're protecting it, how we're marketing, and how we're licensing. We're not marketing our identity to sell. If you sell it, then you don't own it. If you have a house and you sell it, you no longer own it, do you? So whatever happens with that house doesn't concern you. You've collected your money, you're gone. If you don't invest it properly, it's over. However, if you have a house and you say to yourself, I'm going to invest in making sure this house is maintained every year. I'm going to rent the house out to people. People are going to stay. I'm going to put a service charge that will cover the maintenance of the property. So even if people rent it for 20 years, you still own the house. And you're generating income by allowing people to stay. So what you've done is you've figured out a way to protect your property, market it to everybody to see that it's a great house. You've painted it. The gates are nice. And then people have come to rent it, to lease it from you. We need to get into the culture of leasing our IP and not selling it. So when I talk about marketing IP, I'm not saying marketing the IP to sell. I'm saying marketing the IP to license. Now, we also need to figure out how are we ensuring that revenue generated abroad comes back home. We all know that we have a growing diaspora. And most of the Africans that are going there, especially my generation, you don't just travel to America and be a bum. You have to be top of class. You have to be the best in school. You have to work hard. And the records show in America, Nigerians are known for their academic records and their endeavors. So it's evident. So what this means is there is a growing population of Nigerians who have disposable income. Because the higher your education, the more likely you're going to get a job, and the more likely you're going to earn above minimum wage, the more likely you're going to be able to pay $9 or $11 for Spotify, right? The second thing is Forex inflow as the revenue is generated. How do we ensure that we're getting foreign exchange coming into our market? What role does the creative industry or the music industry play in making sure these things happen? So that's what I mean about ensuring that money comes back home. What pipeline can we set up to ensure that the money is coming back home? Then the last thing is job creation. How do we create jobs? How do we ensure local creative entrepreneurs can actually create jobs for people? And how do we ensure that local creative entrepreneurs have the right people to employ? That's a very important thing, because you can have a nice company and you don't have who can work for you, it's useless. You have a great guy who can work but doesn't have a company he can work in, unemployment problem, right? So according to the UNDP in 2015, they published a report that stated that Africa as a whole generates 3 million jobs, like proper jobs, like overall. 3 million jobs for 12 to 10 million youth entering the market every year. Yeah, that was 2015. In 2015, the dollar was 200 naira. So it's probably worse now, right? So we have 10 to 12 million people grappling for 3 million jobs every year. So where does the music industry play a role? Let me give you one example. So I said this earlier during the panel. If an artist experiences mild success, I mean mild, like he's selling on Spotify, he's not doing 1 billion streams, he's he's okay. He can employ 3 to 10 people. A manager, a lawyer, social media manager, an assistant, an account, like we could go on, right? He can employ people. Now, if 1,000 artists experience mild success across Africa, that's 3 to 10,000 jobs. And that's just artists. I'm saying if the creative economy and the creatives within that economy are generating income and revenue, whether from living in Nigeria and earning abroad, they can create hundreds of thousands and millions of jobs. But how do we get there? So let's have a conversation about that. That's why we're here. So I talked about a roadmap. What are the things? How do we move in the direction that works? Right now, we've agreed that it's not working, Abby. For those who just came, we talked about our problem. The reality is that there are a lot of successful careers, but we don't have a successful ecosystem. It's not working. And if the ecosystem stays unsuccessful for too long, it's going to make the careers of the artists unsuccessful. Yeah? So, a roadmap. The first step is in the development and the reiteration of an IP protection framework. One of the things you put in an IP protection framework is like the Copyright Act, right? So recently, last year, or the year before, the Copyright Act was passed into law. Only problem is, it's the first one since the 60s. So, a lot of catching up, right? Now, although it's recent, it doesn't cater enough to the digital growth that we've experienced from platforms like Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, etc., right? So we still need to update it. That's where iteration comes in. So we need a framework that we can reference to ensure that as the music industry grows, we have something that protects our IP. Sorry, I hope it didn't break, and I hope if it did, it's not expensive. Right? So, the framework, IP protection, laws, policies that protect our IP. What's our IP? Our language. Music just carries our IP. Books carry our IP. Our culture, our language, our identity. The second thing is awareness. So after we've created this framework, we need people to know about the framework. We need people to make sense of the framework. And that doesn't happen without education and awareness. The next thing we need is engagement. So after you make people aware, you need to give them the opportunity to ask you questions, right? So for example, education is being done here, but you have the opportunity to ask me what? Questions. It's about to turn into a speed date because I don't have time anymore, right? Now, that's the engagement we're doing now. So education, you know about the music in some way. Now you have the opportunity to engage somebody and ask questions. The third thing is training. Because some people who engage realize, okay, I don't want to do this. But some people say, you know what, I want to know more. That's where training comes in. Those are the guys who we need to train. We can't train everybody. We don't have enough resources. So we need to train the people who are interested in being a part of the system. When we train, we now need to also identify people within that training that are ready to set up businesses. Because there are people who we're going to employ for jobs, and there are people who need to employ people for jobs. So we need to ensure that we're also looking at the entrepreneurial part of that, not just training guys to go work in a company. Great, but we also have to train people who will build these companies. Then the last thing is job placements. This is a roadmap. An IP framework that is protected so we can license. Remember, we're protecting it to license, not to sell. Awareness about what we've developed and how people can actually properly protect it and use it. Engagement in teaching people how to do that. Training them so they can start doing it. And then ensuring that we help them develop businesses to execute those things and then we can place people in those jobs. Now, we have to manage some external problems. There's some international companies and businesses that show up. I work for Sony, so it's not like, but the point is, when we develop an IP framework, we determine how they do business here. How do they protect people? How many people are they employing? How are they paying people? Are they training people? Are they going to support local economy? Are they going to support local businesses? These are questions we need to ask. So we need to have a framework that helps us manage the exploitation of our IP. Because if someone doesn't have information and has a property, one of two things happen. Somebody exploits you or you lose it, right? So it's important for us to protect that. Why must we do this? Capacity development. How many industries do we have in the music business? Do you know? Huh? No. How many industries do we have? Most curriculums will tell you there are 4, right? There is the publishing industry, there's the recording industry, there's the live industry, and now there is the tech industry, tech for music. So these are technology platforms that are being developed for music. I'd like to add one, support services. Support services are managers, lawyers, accountants. Doing accounting for a musician is different from doing accounting for a bank. So people need to understand how that works. So I think those 5 industries. So why we must do this is capacity development. We need people in those different industries working so that they can support each other. If the publishing industry creates compositions that the recording industry is going to use, somebody needs to tell the recording industry how to properly utilize it without abusing it. And someone needs to tell the guys in the publishing industry how to protect it so it's not abused. If you don't know how to use something, you're going to abuse it, right? And somebody needs to then tell the live guys how they can manage that while they're pulling people in and what rights they're infringing on. And someone needs to tell the tech guys how AI needs to have a limit. And then someone needs to teach the guys how to protect the interests of the rights owners, the artists, the producers, etc. The second reason why we must do this is... Sorry, can you go up? Yeah, there's another page, right? There is something there. The second reason is we need a globally competitive ecosystem. And the only way to do that is to empower informed individuals and businesses, education. When we get educated and we know how the industries work, we participate in the global economy. We're able to say, here is how you do business in Nigeria, and this is how we protect our IP. So your American business, come to Nigeria, come do business with us, but here is how you do business so that my people are protected, so that you give them jobs, you train them, and you ensure that there is a symbiotic relationship. The third reason is interstate and intra-Africa trade, collaboration. Collaboration is useless if there's no value exchange. And people can't give value they don't have. So we need to train people to develop value so that they're available to compete in the global markets so that we can collaborate. Does that make sense? When we collaborate properly, we're able to create opportunities for ourselves. Now, the last reason is what I've been preaching, cultural and preservation of our IP. We need to protect who we are. We've gotten to a point now where it's a global economy, but as I said, we're mistaking collaboration for help. When I go to someone and say, do something for me, and I offer no value, one of two things will happen. They will either exploit me or they're just helping me. One of the two. The reality is we don't want help. We don't want to be exploited. We want to contribute. And we can't contribute if we have no value. And we have no value if we're not protecting our IP and empowering individuals and businesses. And we can't empower businesses if we don't educate them. Thank you very much.